Hi, I'm Jessica,
Hi, I'm Seun.
and we're introducing our podcast to all the girls who have moved before.
We're two Nigerian girls who moved to London, and we've come together to have conversations with women who've moved from point A to point B.
Whether that's a new country, career, friendship, or marriage, any big life event, we're here to talk about it.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of To All the Girls Who Have Moved Before. My name is Seun, and Jessica isn't with us today, but instead I have my really beautiful, gorgeous friend here, Shona. I will let Shona introduce herself, but just to recap what the podcast is about, we're all about like life changes, navigations, whether that's like career, friendship, relationships, anything, like we're here to talk about it. So today we're going to be talking very loosely around networking. Moving to a big city, you've arrived. How do you make new friends? Shona is an extrovert extraordinaire. Like, she took me under her wings and basically said, "You're my friend." And that's pretty much like how I know her.
That's basically.
I'll let you introduce yourself. Go for it.
Sure. Hello, my name is Shona. I had the honor of meeting Sean recently, but we both live in London. I've lived in London for about 8 years. I moved here from Scotland, and when I was growing up, I was growing up in Scotland and New Zealand. So I've done a little bit of movement, but as we've slightly just explored before this podcast started, I feel like my moves have been so much easier and so much less of a cultural difference than to Nigeria and London.
I imagine, because so I don't know too much about New Zealand.
You should go one day.
I would love to go one day. The thing that scares me, and honestly, first of all, does it irk you when people don't know the difference between Australia and New Zealand?
Oh yeah, fun point here is when I grew up in Scotland, people would tell me, "How was Australia?" And when I was in New Zealand, they'd be like, "How's England?" So I think I've grown up with always being in the smaller country, the lesser known. So it's not really irk, but I'm used to it. But
Interesting. Okay.
New Zealand is its own island. It takes 4 hours to fly to Australia. So
Really?
Yeah,
4 hours?
it's like here to Moscow or something. Maybe that's wrong.
Oh,
but it's
wow.
fine.
No,
Yeah.
I never knew. I just assumed that they were very close.
And they're all if the map's shrunk, then they're beside each other, or they're far apart depending on where you're in the world looking at the world map.
I see the world map. I feel like that's just another rabbit hole, because
how, that's a whole other rabbit hole. Yeah, it could. That is a whole other rabbit hole with the UK in the middle. Fuck that. Anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway.
UK in the middle, and the US looking as big as it is, and Africa being this thing. That's
for another episode.
anywho, yes, moved here from Scotland, and before that New Zealand. And how did you find the move? Even just coming
from Scotland to England, having grown up in Scotland and New Zealand, a little bit of both, mainly in Scotland. I think I was privileged to have a bit of an open mind to the world. I really wanted to move abroad. I was quite good at German during high school, and I was really convinced with that I wanted to move to Germany, just because I was like, this is a language I can speak. Let's get out of here. Let's go to Germany.
Okay, cool.
And so I wanted to move to Germany, or when I was applying for universities, I just wanted to get out of the UK. So I was like, US, Germany, or around Europe. But I studied, I wanted to study physics, and I ended up getting into Imperial College London, which is in London. Oh. And the only thing I knew about that was that my mom had said I can't remember how she described it, but she's basically I think it's quite nerdy, and there's lots of guys, and it's quite dry. She said it in a way that's something that's very much not me, and that made me want to go. I was like, oh, okay, I can be one of them. And at the time it was third in the world for physics. It was very good. So I was like, okay, I'll go there. So I basically decided to move to London based on just because the university was good for my degree. I did not want to move to London. I had no interest in moving to England. London to me was England. And that could be a whole other topic, because I actually think they're so different. And there's nothing wrong with England. I'm just a Scottish person. So we grew up being a bit England. So I chose to move for uni, and I've been now here for 8 years-ish because I've worked.
Yeah, what you're saying, there's so many patterns that are just making sense in my head. My sister actually goes to Imperial.
Does she? I think I knew about this.
Yes, I feel like I did. Imperial and then ECL, and she's probably the nerdiest person right now.
She's one of my people. I love it.
And then you mentioned also speaking German, and actually on a previous episode of the podcast we spoke about how Jessica she was so convinced in her German skills. She went to Germany and then like just totally flunked it on like the train ride or something. It was like a whole thing.
I wish I was so good at German, and I should practice more.
Are you still good at German?
No, like since I went to university, I actually took the physics course because you could do physics with a year in Europe. And I was like, okay, I'll move to London, but at least I will do a year abroad in Germany. And then I ended up having so much fun in Freshers Week and not paying attention to anything that like I missed the deadline. And I was like, okay, I guess I'm not good. There was some weird scenario where if I really wanted it, I could have got it, but I just sort of got distracted by life. And then I was like, actually, I'm quite happy here. I can move after uni.
It's great that you talk about being distracted by life, because I feel like that's a really good segue to what we want to talk about today. Like how you approach just like living life in so far as like friendships. Tell me about your approach to that.
I guess we were talking about this before a little bit. I think in high school I had amazing, good few friends. I think I was always someone who was friends with a lot of people, like had a good relationship with everyone. I was never involved, I don't think, in any drama. I was just like easygoing, very focused on my own stuff, and had a few amazing people. Moved to university, and don't think I knew anyone when I moved to university, even just Scotland to England. I think maybe like 2 people in my year moved down to England, but really, really hardly anyone. I just threw myself into it. I definitely think in life, it's about who you know. So there's a little bit of me that's like, I want to meet everyone. I'm so interested in people. And this is what plays into my like extreme extrovertedness, where I gain energy from people. So I remember Freshers Week being fun because like it's designed for you to meet people. And I'm like, I'm in my element.
I see.
And it was just really fun. So when I moved to London, I was lucky enough to be moving with university, and that lets you meet people. It is designed so that you meet your classmates or the people in your halls, etc. And I was in quite a sociable hall. I was also just a very sociable person in first year. And I remember not studying enough and just doing a lot of organizing friends to meet each other.
Is this something that comes like naturally, like genuinely naturally to you? Because you mentioned like, in this world, it's about who you know. And I feel like that's what drives like a lot of people to like make friends. But it sounds like for you, it's almost the opposite, where like you like making sense in it. And then it's like, okay, great.
But there's a reason for this.
This is good.
I think it comes naturally. I think I've never had a problem making friends. I'm sure growing up and moving around helps, like being taken out of school and put in another school where you're like, Mom, all my friends are here, I don't want to leave, and then learning that you can adapt and just meet new people in new places. So moving to New Zealand really helped, and back and forth between the two. So I think I never had a problem with it, but I don't think I realized how extroverted I was until I moved to uni and had to start again in a new place. And I was like, oh, this is so fun. And like throughout uni, I had amazing friends in uni, but I think I tried to still meet people out of uni, because for everyone, your sister will know this, at Imperial, the only subjects are maths and engineering and medicine. So very, very technical types of people, which I love. Like I'm a technical person, but it was important for me to try and meet people that were outside of my university experience. So I did do a little bit of, it was a very intense degree, so I hardly did anything fun. That's a bit dramatic, but didn't have a huge amount of free time is how I look back on it, but did try and meet some people out of my university. And then that meant that when I finished uni and moved into the big bad world of London outside of university, I already kind of had my foot in the door with just like life outside of this circle that I'd been in within uni, which was really nice.
So one thing about extroverts, which is probably like a stereotype, is that you guys like to make a lot of friends, but you don't have like depth of friendship. Is this true?
I imagine it's true to a certain extent, whether it's intentional or not, because if you're someone who spends time with a lot of people, you don't spend time with one person as much, perhaps. This is just me hypothesizing. When I think about myself, I think I definitely have some really good, close friends. Okay. I don't think that's been the case with me. And definitely throughout history, I've always had like a few really, really good friends. And then I am always meeting up with random people that I know around the side of that.
Do you have like a technique on how you did it? Or is it just like, oh, I think about this person and I'm like, oh, I should probably meet up with this person. And then
interestingly, I don't have a technique, but I have a friend who, Henry, if you're out there, I'm going to shout you out. He had a Notion planner that would track when he saw friends and alert him when it had been a certain amount of time since he'd reached out to that friend. And like that to me was wild. That was the most organized way of seeing friends ever. Personally, I don't need that, because I think I'm just constantly like, something will trigger me to remember someone and I will immediately be them like, oh, it just like this reminded me of you. How are you doing? Let's grab a coffee, something like that. So I'm definitely not as structured as this person, Henry.
I would love to get Henry on the podcast, because I feel like a lot of our listeners relate more to Henry than
exactly.
Where it's like, oh, I just think about this person, and
how do you do it?
How do I do it? I don't.
You do. You recluse until someone messages you, and I'm like, let's go.
Like, this is what I said. Like, people adopt me as their friends. I feel like I just like.
It's so adoptable.
My job is to just like project an aura, and then the right people just like find me. But I do think that, I mean, let me think. There are times where I've like been very intentional about meeting people, and in fact, on the podcast, we've spoken about like friendship crushes. So this is like where like you feel like, oh, I'd really love to be friends with that person, and then you get your hands get like a bit like, but not watching like,
clammy.
When you're thinking about reaching out to them, and you just feel like a bit, and you really want to get to know that person, and then the way it is for me is almost like a step to build a relationship with that person. So it's very like intentional for me in that way, in that like I want to be your friend and I want to understand how you think. And so for me, it's like very deep. I go very deep with people, and I have a lot of acquaintances, definitely, but I wouldn't necessarily consider them like friends.
Yeah. I guess it depends what you call a friend as well, because I think I loosely refer to anyone I've ever had at least a few conversations with, like gone for coffee or something, as like a friend. But maybe you'd call them an acquaintance, because you have a much higher bar for someone that you would call. I think I throw that term around because I don't mind. I'm like, yeah, everyone's a friend.
Yeah.
Whereas you probably, it's a bit more sacred to you and you wouldn't call them a friend.
I mean, yes, but also no, like in like everyday terms, I would just say like, hey, that's my friend. Like I'm not like too precious about like, oh, you're not my friend.
Okay. But in your mind, you know.
But in my mind, I know that there's definitely like levels to this shit. So it's like, okay, there are people who I would like actively invest in versus other people who I'm like, okay, hi, I would say, like wish you a happy birthday and stuff. But like, so not necessarily going out to grab coffee all the time.
Yeah, that makes sense. Can you think of a time or examples where you've wanted to reach out to someone and like you've got stressed about it, how you went about doing that? Because I guess it also depends how you met the person. Because where my mind went, is I guess the only times I felt really awkward about wanting to reach out to someone who I really wanted to reach out to is if I met them through a friend where I feel like I should really only see them through that friend. But then other than that, I think if you just like, I'm interested what examples you have if like you just met someone at a networking event.
Okay, so this is the thing. Okay, sorry. We should talk about how we met, by the way. But like, I never meet like if I meet someone at a networking event, then chances are we're not actually going to be like actual.
Yeah, that's true.
Because like I've met you through like almost a work context, which we did meet at networking events, but obviously that's not necessarily the case. So like it's a bit unusual. It's definitely unusual for me. But like how I tend to meet people. It's probably through social media, believe it or not.
Okay.
Like, so because I definitely think I'm like well connected. So I have like people who I went to like secondary school with in there, people who I went to university with, people I work with, like all on my social media. And so like I tend to see like my universe is sort of there. Yeah. And then I would see someone that's like slightly out of my universe and then I'll try to
like posted by a friend.
Person. Yeah, that type of thing.
Oh yeah, that's a bit harder because then you really just have to message them online. You've never actually met them before.
But the thing is like people always know of each other.
Yeah.
So like even if I'm like meeting someone for the first time, chances I'm not really meeting them for the first time. Like I've seen you, we're on social media, but I've maybe seen you at a house party and like we've said hi, and then like we move on. But like something attracted you to me that day or me to you that day, and then like I feel a need to like follow up or say like I found your energy like really good. Do you want to get lunch or something? For me, I love to meet people. I love to hang out with people over brunch.
Yes, you said brunch and going to Pilates. Well, that's what we did. But that's like, brunch is nice because then you have like a long time you can really talk.
Yes. I love brunch. I love just like breakfast food in general.
Yeah, I could eat breakfast 3 times a day.
Yeah, I probably eat breakfast 3 times a day. But like, so that's like my key way of meeting people. Like, how do you? It's not meeting people, but just like hanging.
Something like through social media. I actually don't think. I think I meet so many people in real life, like casually, say at an event or at a our own events, because I sometimes run events, and or just through friends where you naturally have something in common. Like if I've met someone at a friend's house party, let's say, or birthday party, if I'm interested in being friends with them, it's probably because we had a conversation. They mentioned something I'd love to know more about, which makes it slightly easier to make an introduction, because I'm like, oh, we talked about this, or mutual friend mentioned you do this, I'd love to learn more, something like that. Whereas through social media, I'm trying to think of instances where friends have posted friends and I've wanted to be friends with them, and I actually can't think of many examples. And it's interesting because then clearly you're attracted to someone's vibe that you get, and you can gauge that through social media. I think maybe I'm just more, maybe I can't think of examples, but I'm like more, not suspicious, but more uninterested until I know there's actually something of substance.
Fair enough. I think it's more, and obviously like people post their
The best,
thoughts
yeah,
as
yeah.
well
Oh, okay,
on
yeah,
social
thoughts.
media, right? So like it's not necessarily
Well,
like
I think most
meeting
people
someone cold.
don't. Like maybe if they're
it depends on the
influenced.
social
Yeah, exactly,
media
exactly.
you're talking about. Like if it's like Twitter, like that's the whole point.
okay,
Like, or like
okay.
even if it's also by the things that like you repost, right? So the
That's
things
true.
that like
That's
interest
true.
you.
That's
so like
true.
you sort of get a vibe. Some people can be very like spiritual, by the way, on their social
Yeah,
media,
that's
and
true.
like they post a lot about Jesus, and like you get a vibe of like what people are
That's
like
true.
and what they're interested in by like what they post. So you mentioned that you like to meet people like in real life more. Like what avenues have you sort of cultivated? Or maybe not cultivated, but like joined. Do you have like any clubs, any things that you would share that make it like conducive to meet people? Or does not even
No,
like
that completely makes sense. And I think people start to think of clubs and stuff when they really need to just generally meet new people. And I'd say, first of all, I've been lucky that because I moved to this big, scary, lonely city through university, I already had quite a good network when it came to like joining the big, like I've never really felt lonely in London, which is, it's very lucky, because a lot of people do, because it's hard to meet new people, especially when you're working. And if you're not, I mean, maybe some people are friends with their colleagues if they work in a big company. I work in a very small company, so as much as I love my colleagues, they couldn't be my only friends because I'd go crazy. But I've been lucky that I already had quite a big network. I'd say in terms of where I meet new people, because of that network, is through friends. And that's again, I'd say very lucky and privileged, and I've worked hard, I guess, to have a network to get to that point. But things that are a bit more tangible, or like advice I can give, let me see. So the way that you interact with people by going for one-on-one brunch, that doesn't encourage you meeting their friends necessarily. Sure. And I think maybe it's because I'm at the stage where I know so many people that are so amazing and lovely, and I almost don't have enough, say, free time in a week. I love organizing things where people can meet each other. And I say that because someone like me, you will, if you're interested in, will probably meet hopefully nice people through me, because I'm one of those nodes in a network that's like, oh, I love, it brings me joy to bring people together
with different people.
Yeah.
And then,
so if you have friends that know a lot of people or love connecting people, that's how you can meet people. That's one thing. So I think I've benefited from some of my friends being like, oh, I have a bunch of friends I think you get on with. Let me organize something. Yeah. Which is like, it takes a lot for that person to organize it. It takes someone that like enjoys doing it. And I think I do.
From what you just said, it does take like a certain type of person to like organize these events where like people want to meet each other. And that was me. Yeah. I and Jessica, we had this great idea of Dara London, the community where, so you know, we would create avenues for people to meet each other. And what had happened was that like people were coming to these events, they would meet each other, but we weren't quite sure that like those connections were being formed outside of the community. Yeah. Like, is this something that you...
How often was the community meeting?
It was meeting, let's say like once a month.
Yeah. I mean, that's still a fair amount.
Once a month. Ish.
Yeah. It's hard to organize and keep it going, because I do think it takes a couple of times. I remember when I joined university and I was really in that mindset of like actively trying to build my network. When I'd meet someone, even if I had like a 10-minute conversation with them and I found them interesting, I'd ask for their Instagram at that time. I feel like I only have Instagram on my phone sometimes these days, so I wouldn't ask for Instagram anymore. And I'm actually not as good with doing that anymore, but I used to be really good. If I met someone of interest, I would do the thing where I'm like, can I get you on Instagram? Which is a bit awkward sometimes. But it's worth doing, because then you have that initial connection where even if you don't message each other, you start to see each other's stories, and then you could be like, message them a few weeks later being like, shall we go for coffee, because you met once. But it's making that first step, I think, that's sometimes quite awkward. And if you don't go out your way to do it. It's easier if you've met a few times. So that's why I ask about the consistency or the regularity of the community events, because likely people aren't going to connect and be like, can I get your Instagram? Like in the first time they met, it's probably going to take a few times that they meet. So therefore making them see each other. And
No, I get that. I think one of the other reasons that the community was really hard to run is because we wouldn't get, like, people couldn't make time to be there. So like every time you'd have the community meet, then it wouldn't necessarily be the same people that were there the last time. And so like
in London, you just got to accept that that is just the way
I think the other bit about that is just the way that you frame yours as like networking or like gatherings versus mine was sort of like community, where I feel like community is such a loaded word where you feel like you have to be like friends with that person. But I think if we end up relaunching it, I will probably speak to Jessica about like, maybe we just frame it as like networking events, put the pressure up. You don't have to come like every single time, but when you come, it's then about you being intentional about like, can I get your Instagram?
Was that what it was for? It was for really letting people meet each other.
It was more community in the sense of like, okay, I'm new to London or been in London and I don't have many friends. I'd like to just like understand like what other people are up to.
Amazing, yeah.
So it was, I feel like community sort of puts like it gives like a villager feel, like you're part of something where you don't necessarily have to be part of community.
That you're probably
like,
coming because you have a shared experience, which is nice. Whether it's called community or a networking event, I think people will be drawn to it because they have something in common. And if there was some sort of pressure where it was like, it felt like they had to come every time, realistically in London, people do not
pressure for them.
Okay.
Pressure for us.
Like
like
people really
planning it. Because obviously like we had to evaluate ourselves based on like, do we think that this thing is actually working? Are people actually making friends? But friendship is such a loaded thing that like happens outside of any event.
You could track things like, did you follow up with someone? I can talk about one great piece of advice I have for how to make friends, which is at Farrago events. So I don't need to go into it too much. It's going to be another podcast, but my partner and I and some other friends that actually I met through university and random instances of just being in the right place at the right time all came together with a group of us starting something called Farrago, which is it's a community. It's actually a company. We've got events that we run. We have an agency, so we have musicians in London that go out and perform at pubs, bars, restaurants. So we have an agency, we have our own events, and then we do like more corporate bookings and put on events for other people. The theme surrounding Farrago is supporting the best grassroots artists in London. So just that's a bit of background. And we can go into that. So
people can join it.
Everyone can join it. So when I say it's a community, we call ourselves a community because we have cultivated a community by putting on regular events. So we put on events where we're showcasing good musicians. But how we started is, of course, you got to start from somewhere. We just invite all our friends and then they invite their friends. And you get this critical mass of, say, a few hundred people where it's all just our network. And it was really nice when we started. We've been doing it for a couple of years now. Because everyone knew someone, or at least knew someone who knew someone. And there was this like core community of people that would come. And we found over time that those people, you get busy, like you can't expect people to keep coming to your events. The community has actually changed where now the people that are coming find it much more through like social media. So they don't know each other. But I think the fact that it started from just friends of friends of friends means there's still quite a relaxed, friendly, easygoing vibe. And I've had so much feedback, and what's really important to me is that it's a place where people can meet other people, because a lot of people that were coming are young working professionals, in their 20s or 30s, maybe at university as well, and they don't know many people, and they'd love to make friends.
Like meeting based off of like the music, like is
in
that
some
what,
ways
like, connects
the way we market it is quite heavily, like if you look at the content we put out, it's people having fun together. And yes, there's some live music in the background. There's also some like so the word Farrago means a confused mixture. So every event has a few artists of different genres. So it's never like, oh, I'm going because I like this genre. It's like you're going, you will not know what you get. So you can pick a mix, but everyone's talented and everyone's a little bit different.
It's a bit like So Far Sounds.
It's So Far Sounds, but with So Far Sounds, it's very like intimate. You sit, you watch, and it's great because you like really listen to their music. But for Farrago events, although yes, we hope everyone really gives them, a lot of attention, listen to the music, there's a huge social aspect.
So the music is almost in the back.
No, it is like, but it'll more be, we try and like organize around, the first hour will be a DJ where it's just music playing. There's like collaborative stuff. There's maybe a free drink, no pressure to drink, trying to disconnect the drinking and the socializing. But I say all this because we've created this community, yes, based on at least my partner Alan's motivation by helping grassroots artists. But my side of it, and I know others in the team, has just been a way for people to meet people. And so going, as you say, going to clubs or societies, this isn't so much of a club as it is just like maybe something you saw on social media and you're like, oh, that looks quite friendly. A lot of people come by themselves and they message us being like, hi, I really want to come to Farrago, but I don't know anyone. And I will meet them and chat. Like, I love meeting people. So I'm like, oh, hi. And I'm so grateful when people come, like, come in, really nice to meet you, find something in common, and then introduce them to other people. And so over the last 2 years, we've got such a core community of people that maybe came by themselves or just by coming 3 times, see the same familiar face and then do the messaging. But it's only because we've done it, whether we're crazy or whatever, just so many times that it's actually really nice that now there's friendship groups that have formed because of coming to Farrago. And that's so motivating to me. I love it. It makes me really, really happy.
No, I think it's super interesting. I wonder if like parts of it is just like cultural in the sense of like when I meet people at like events like Farrago, like I don't know that this is like a good or bad thing. It's just like culture. Like I don't know that I just would follow up with that person. Like, it just sort of ends where it ends. But I don't know if this is like a non-Black African Nigerian thing, but like I do see that there are other groups of people who are just so much more open about meeting people, and then they form this instant connections, whereas for me it just takes like
maybe it's cultural, but it's also probably just personality types.
Fair
like
enough.
If you found someone really interesting, or you had a conversation like we did. We need to talk about our love story.
I mean,
because we had a conversation and I think we just both were like, oh, we actually get on really well, even though it was in a work context that we followed up. So I think that still happens, say, at Farrago, if people get on, but it does take someone to make the first move. So it's always to be a little bit.
Enough. But like, let me ask you this. Yeah. It's like the way that we talk about friendships on this podcast is just for your close friends. Do you know their parents? Or their siblings?
Good question. Only people that I grew up with.
Only people that
and flatmates. I maybe met theirs. Okay. And then maybe a couple of others in London, but like, no. When family visits in London, you're just busy taking them to nice restaurants. You don't introduce them to your friends necessarily.
But like, you see, well, that said, I'm not like on a high ground or anything. Like, there's not that many friends of who have met their families.
Yeah.
But it does add just like another level of intimacy. But like, you don't necessarily need to do that when
it's also
when
hard
you're in,
to
like,
do that if your family are abroad.
Yeah, no, 100%. So like, there are times that like your family comes over, like, but there are avenues for you to like meet people in a very different, more intimate way that I think that other people don't really take advantage of. Like, imagine just like sitting down with someone and like being like, oh my gosh, this is the person who grew up with you. Like, that's a whole another dimension to the relationship that you have with that person. And so like that's how I like to be with. But you don't necessarily need that when you're thinking about like, oof, I'm just coming to London, I need to make new friends. Like, don't listen to me.
Don't listen to me.
Don't listen to me. But like, I do think that part of it is just like a slightly different approach to
how you make
friendship.
Yeah.
So you mentioned starting Farrago with your partner, Alan.
Shout out to
Alan. But this seems very different from like physics, right? Like what you were doing, even though it might have been similar, like personality wise. Like, how did you come about starting Farrago?
So Farrago is mainly the brainchild of Alan, my partner. But when we first got together, we were both the kind of people that would always, it sounds weird, but play music at a party. If you're at a gathering at university, someone's on the aux.
Yes.
Often I would be the one, or like if no one else was.
Wait, was this how you guys met?
No, but I say this because this was both a personality trait where we were both slightly opinionated about music, and that we had lots of artists we liked, and we were often the one playing the music. And I say this because often I really like house music DJs amongst many other genres, but say it was house DJs. I remember a time when someone came to me and was like, oh, I love this song. Who's it by? And I referred the DJ who had like 1,000 monthly listens, like really, really small DJ who had found by like spending loads of time on Spotify. And it made me think that the impact that my referral had means so much more to that artist than if someone was like, oh, what's the song? Oh, it's by Doja Cat. And so basically I was already slightly thinking about the fact that, oh God, there's so many good artists out there that just no one knows about. Alan separately was also the person that often like had music, and he grew up with his brother Jacob, who's a very talented musician, and saw firsthand how musicians that are talented may not also be good business people, don't know how to sell themselves. Alan started Farrago because he wanted a platform, or the way in which to platform talented artists, which, you know, we do all the marketing, we do the event organizing, and they just need to sing, and we can hopefully grow their audience. So that's how it all ties together. But Alan was passionate about this, and we started a playlist called Farrago, actually, because it comes back to us both playing the music at the parties, where often we'd have songs by small DJs or small bands that were like, oh, we want our family and friends to know about. So we started a playlist called Farrago that was 12 songs each week. And we had like 100 followers. We're like, woo, which is really cute. And we called it Farrago again because we found the word and it means a confused mixture. And we were always trying to have different genres. And we did that for a few months, and randomly, one of these fate moments, he got stopped on the street when we were walking London one day because he was wearing like a cool outfit by a guy called like Icy Cough or something. He's like a men's fashion person. And he interviewed Alan on the street being like, oh, what are you wearing for us today? And then he's like, oh, what kind of music do you listen to? And Alan was like, oh, I listen to a lot of like French house music, and I like do a playlist with my girlfriend called Farrago. And we thought he'd just cut it, and also like, who cares? It's just our little like side thing. He actually didn't cut it, and overnight we gained like say 500 followers or something.
Whoa,
but it was enough. It was like nothing significant. It's a Spotify playlist. You can't monetize that, or maybe you can, but maybe not at the stage of 500 followers. But it made Alan, and Alan's one of these visionary types. He was like, I think the first thing he said was like, I want to run a Farrago festival. And I was like, you want to run a festival. And for me, it was like,
were you putting your product manager hat on at that time?
I'm just a realist, and he's maybe more of a visionary where I am, where he's like, yeah, we can do something with this, which I obviously love his thinking, but I just don't think like that. Like I would have been like, yeah, cool, but like still no one knows about us, you know? And this comes back to the making friends thread, because Alan did not know, at least from my perspective, he didn't know what he didn't know about the music industry in many ways. Although he knew his brother as an artist, so he felt really passionate. I think he didn't realize, at least in my mind, and maybe I'm being rude, sorry, Alan, that he didn't know how hard it would be to just throw a festival. But I felt like I slightly knew about the music industry because of this one person that I'd met randomly about 3 years ago and slightly kept in contact with, called Eric. Shout out to Eric, because Eric is the most knowledgeable person about the music industry in London. And basically I met this guy randomly, and I just stayed in contact because I thought he was interesting. He was fun. He always did events and stuff. So when Alan said, oh yeah, let's run a festival, I was like, let's at least like get a group together that knows more about it. So I brought together, a good friend of ours called Patrick, who did physics with me, actually. We've got a surprising number of physicists in our music event, in our music thing. And then also this guy called Eric. So I was like, okay, Eric actually knows the music industry. And then Alan had a friend called Kayan, who had booked DJ nights for his university society, so new venues. And then I guess I was just like a orchestrator, as I am. We're both product managers, so that makes sense. So we got the group together, and then we sort of talked about it, and we decided to start running events. So, but it was one of those nice moments where if I hadn't met Eric randomly 3 years ago and brought him into the scene, I don't think Farrago would have taken off. And it was one of those things where it was divine timing with all the people, and Jacob, sorry, I should say, Alan's brother Jacob, the musician, brought in that understanding of how it is to be a musician. And so there was like this group of people that all knew something about the industry through random connections. And yeah, we've been going for like 2 years.
I mean, that is awesome, because that's like the real sort of effect of networking.
Exactly.
Right? So like you're able to build something with people who might not be in like in your immediate like vicinity.
You're like, I know someone who's good at social media. I know someone who's good at venues, and it all came together in a really, really good way.
That's good. And how long has Farrago been in existence now?
It's now been 2 or 3 years.
Oh, nice.
So it's nice. So if people want to make friends, this isn't a plug, but it is kind of a plug.
No, it's a plug. You should plug it.
It's a plug, but for a really good effect.
Like,
I genuinely
where can we find you?
At Farrago.
Can you spell Farrago?
Farrago. And actually, the word is pronounced Farrago, but we chose the word on Google without listening to it. And 6 months we were calling it Farrago, and then I actually played it, and I was like, oh shit.
Wait, what language is the word?
It's English.
Oh,
It's an English word.
It's an
no,
English word?
yeah, it's
Oh.
it's like you could say like a Farrago of art means like a mixture of art. So
I just
we
thought
are
it
a
was
Farrago
some
of music.
exotic.
You have to
like-
pronounce it Farrago, otherwise, you won't get in. I'm joking. But
I love that. Okay, so I wanted to talk about situationships, like in friendships, like in the friendship context. Have you ever experienced anything like that?
I have no idea what a situationship in a friendship context
But
is.
you know what a situationship is, like in a
Yeah, like
romantic
if you're
context.
is it like if you started being friends, we're like, are we friends or are we not friends?
I mean, are we friends or we're not friends? But also just like something weird happened in the friendship, and now it's just like it's just weird.
Maybe all my friends are like, yeah, you're that friend, and I have a situationship, and I'm like, it's no problem. Like, been alive for what 26 years on this planet. Like, friendships come and go, and like, yeah, some friends from high school, maybe you go through dramatic periods or you fall out, but like, I'm thinking about in the last few years about really awkward.
It sounds like you're just such an open person. You just love life and life loves
No.
you.
I say this, I'll probably walk away and then be like, oh, my life is so much more complicated than I was imagining. But maybe it's also, if we think about the difference between us, like we were talking earlier, where you have really deep, close friends, where probably if something, say you have 10 people that you know really well, or like, okay, let's say you have like 4 or 5 close friends, and I apart from like my partner who I see all the time, and maybe a few friends who I see maybe like once a week, that's quite a lot. I just know a lot, or like I see quite a lot of people regularly. Maybe if a friendship in that way is tainted by like an awkward encounter, or like, oh, maybe they didn't message me back, or maybe if something slightly awkward happens, I don't really notice it so much because they're not such a deep friend. Whereas for you, maybe you really remembered them because it like really impacts the number of people you see. So when I don't think of examples, it's probably not the case that I don't have examples. It's just that like, unless it was something with my partner or like really best friends, like that I see quite regularly. And luckily, I don't think we've been in a situationship recently. Not recently. I guess I can't think of so many examples. Whereas,
no, I think that's fair. Like, what you've said makes sense. Like, you can only really be in those situations when like
you really care and you spend a lot of time and it
connection.
affects your life. Yeah.
No, that makes sense. Cool. Money, career, like I feel like those are always just like touchy. Like, has someone asked you about like your salary and you're like, oh, I don't want to tell this person.
No, because I think it's so important to talk about.
Salary,
but like
transparency.
Transparency. Oh, but I see. So like a friendship getting tainted because you feel slightly uneven, or like competitiveness or something like that.
Any way you want to interpret it.
Let me think. Unproblematic existence. No, definitely not the case.
This is like the model for friendship.
No, not at all. I'm clearly like an airhead where I'm like, and then I'll walk away and be like, oh wait, that was an example. Are your friends in similar careers?
Yes, mostly. I mean, I do have friends that are like completely different, like careers. Like I have a friend who's a lawyer, who's like an architect.
Nice.
2 lawyer friends, actually, now I think about it. But like lots of my friends are in like finance or in like engineering. Technology.
So maybe career changes and pay things, you can almost directly compare yourself because you're both in the corporate world.
Is that how it is for you, or is it different?
I'd say less so. I'm a product manager in a small startup in London, and I think I definitely know some other product managers in startups, but startups vary so much. Like we're a 10-person of a certain amount of funding. And in a certain industry, like my pay will be related to that compared to someone else's. So I guess what I'm saying is that I don't have people necessarily that I can directly compare myself against, because I don't work in a more of a corporate laddery, structured environment.
Like it wouldn't even matter, like if you.
Of course, if I see someone that like get paid shitloads more than me, I'll be like, oh damn, but that's nothing to do with friendships. That's more just to do with like comparison towards other people. But yeah, so do you have an example where like, or have you had cases where talking about career with someone who's in a similar career to you within friendship has made it awkward? Because I'm sure that seems...
I don't think I've had that like career wise, but I have like
money wise,
like money conversations are very like sensitive, obviously. Like I've had friends who are like earning shitloads, and then like obviously the way that we talk about money is just like slightly different. Like someone's like, oh I need like this amount of money to live in, and oh my gosh, I'm so broke, and then I'm just like, huh? Like,
this is a whole other podcast though, because that is like being aware of your privilege and not speaking in a way that's like very inconsiderate of the other people in the room, because that's obviously going to affect your friendships.
I mean, yes, but also like live your life. Like it's fine. Like I'm probably guilty of that as well.
Yeah,
like,
in certain
obviously it's,
contexts,
like
I imagine.
different like levels to this career thing, right? Like not everyone has the same like salary or whatever, and I feel like there's times where like I just speak like in an offhanded way, or like say, guys, what do you think about me buying this thing? And it's like,
to someone that'd be like, that's a really big deal.
really big deal. Exactly.
Yeah.
So like, I don't know, maybe, yes, definitely there's like some self-awareness that needs to come into play, but also like live your life, bestie. Yeah.
I also think it helps to remember, like, take everything with a pinch of salt. And I if I think about who my friends are, I have friends from very different, I guess, economic backgrounds, and I think I'm a bit of a chameleon where I'm in a certain context. I'm at like a private members club in London or something like this, very posh white English background. The way they talk is sometimes like they, and making generalization, it's more likely that people in that context might be talking about money in an offhanded way compared to another group.
Yeah.
And I think because I have quite a mix of friends, I listen to it and I recognize it, but I don't take it personally, because it's all on a spectrum. And like, I know the environments that they grew up in aren't the same as myself. And I know my environment I grew up in isn't the same as someone else. And what they see is like an offhanded, like, oh, I can't afford this. I'm like, why would you even want that? Or like, I've never been able to afford that, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like not taking it personally. But if someone's being very inconsiderate, I think that's like a whole other topic.
No,
podcast topic, which is about being a caring
100%,
and open-minded
100%.
person.
No, yes, 100%.
So if friends are being like that to you, we
should.
That is reflected on them, not on you. So it shouldn't like impact the friendship.
Okay, what advice would you have for someone who is introverted?
Oh, this is so difficult to imagine. No, I'm joking.
And who's trying to build a network, not just make friends, but like build a network.
I think definitely what we were talking about when it comes to reaching out to people, say on social media, because at the end of the day, how I've built my network is reaching out to people via message, say. And like, I think it comes more naturally to me to just be confident in message. But sometimes I'm still like, oh my gosh, this is so weird. Like, what is that like? Like, why is she messaging me? Like, I met her once, or like, maybe I haven't even met them. I've just met them on social media. I actually did it more recently to a girl that I went to uni with. Do not know personally, but I knew she was in my year. But I just think the content she's posting is incredible. She's like an advocate for wildlife conservation. And I've been thinking about it for no joke, like a year, like, oh, I should message that girl. Oh, I should message that girl. And I never did. And for me, it was also just like putting it off, because I was like, and I finally did recently. And I'd love to know what I said. Should I even look at the message of what I said? Because I remember I had to really work up my confidence there. And because I actually thought of her today because she posted on Instagram. And I think I just was like, oh, I think we're in the same year. Love what you're posting. Like, you're absolutely smashing it. Like, making her feel good. And then like, because I genuinely think that is. And then I just said like, I'm hoping our paths cross this year. Would absolutely love to connect and hear more about what you're working on. Sending love, like a sweet message. And then she was like, oh, that's really kind. Like, are you based in London? And then I did the thing saying, shall we go for coffee? But it was working up the courage to actually send that. Took a long time.
But even like what to send, like, what you just said, is so important. Like, you sort of like smush them up a little bit.
Yeah, and like genuinely, because I'm messaging you because I think what you're doing is really interesting.
About like a points that you've met each other.
Exactly. So if you think about it in like a more career context, or say you're messaging someone on LinkedIn, instead of just being like, oh my God, do I message saying just, hi, let's go for coffee? Be like, hey, I love what you're posting, or it was really interesting to hear from you or from a friend about what you're working on. I'd love to learn more. Like, would you be up for going for coffee?
Yeah, but like, do it not in a career context, but like
in a friendship. Like, as you mentioned earlier, how maybe you see someone through a friend on social media and they post certain things and you get to know certain things. Maybe they're more spiritual, maybe they're more, into a certain sport. It's really nice with Instagram. You can respond to stories. Often what I'll do and how I end up connecting with people is responding to a story being like, this looks really cool. Or I've been loving what I've been seeing from what you've been posting. Again, would love to learn more. I think that's generally my approach, is like, I'd love to hear more about it. Like, make it about them,
it sounds
not
like you're all about like learning.
Yeah, learning. And like, at the end of the day, if you're interested in being friends with someone, you must be wanting to know more about them. So it's not that you're lying or smushing up to them in a dishonest way. So I think I often like will respond to a story because that just makes it easy, rather than messaging out the blue where they're like, wow, were they thinking of me all this time? Like the difference between responding to a story is reactive rather than proactive, is sending a message out of the blue. And so I think The problem is if someone's not posting stories, then
that's a really
it
interesting point.
difficult.
Like, is there like a line for you between like career connections versus like personal connections?
It's a good question, actually. I've had one person reach out to me recently that I was so inspired by, and I put it on my New Year's resolutions to try and practice this, where a guy connected with me on LinkedIn being like, you've got a really interesting profile, want to jump on a call? And bless him, like, we're now good friends, but this touched on another subject, but at first I thought he was hitting on me. I was like, fucking LinkedIn, like, get the fuck away. But then I was like, oh, fuck it, why not? Like, let's have a conversation. And it genuinely was him just messaging me because he thought what I'd done was interesting, and we just connected. And I think it's always awkward until you just start talking, and then as soon as you start talking, you'll have something in common.
Yeah, because like there's this transition from like LinkedIn to Instagram.
Well, to like 2D to 3D. It's basically yeah, but like seeing someone's name, like the scary bit is messaging to then have the conversation. Say you message someone on Instagram, because as soon as you've gone for coffee, then it's so much easier to message.
That is a really crucial point that I was hoping that you'd hammer on as well. Is that like actually like messaging people is not the same as like just like meeting them in person.
I hate texting,
like going for coffee. Like that is such a low effort way of just like connecting with people. It's just like, let's grab a coffee.
Exactly.
But if you keep it all on social media, then like
it's also weird, like
a concept.
Well, you think about it in a dating context. If you're just texting someone, I don't know, you maybe it's giving you endorphin hit because you're like, oh my God, we're talking, we know each other so well. You don't really know them until you're in person. So I think it's the same with friends. It's like getting a coffee as soon as possible. That's my personal way of doing it, because then you actually meet the person. But that guy messaging me on LinkedIn, just thinking about the friendship and work context, I hadn't had that where someone was interested in me, let's say, because of my profile career-wise and connected. I think normally I'm connecting with people in my social life, or I'm connecting with people in work context because they've become my customer or something, not just reaching out to someone randomly on LinkedIn because I thought their profile was interesting. But I was so inspired by that because he's now become a good friend. We both find each other really interesting in terms of what we do. And I find him really inspiring, that I was like, I want to do that more this year. Like if I see people that are interesting on LinkedIn, I want to just do the awkward thing and message them. But I'll have to report back, because this is somewhere that I have to practice more.
That's definitely
have you done
like
this?
Next level. No. Have I done that? I don't think I've done it like through LinkedIn, but definitely done it
career
like, in general, like career content. Yes.
In what way? Like seeing someone at an event?
Okay, so I saw this person. She then became a really good mentor, actually. So it's a really nice outcome. So this person, I followed her on Instagram, but I don't remember now the exact context in which I followed her. She had an event that she would run.
Related to work?
Not related to work. This was just like around womanhood. And so it was very similar to this, actually, like bringing on women to talk about like their experiences in and around the topic of womanhood. And I was fangirling so freaking hard.
Love that.
But then I realized, oh my gosh, she works at my company. So then instead
so it
of
came
like
that way rather than
reaching out to her like through Instagram, which I thought she'd probably just like ignore me. I then reached out to her through work and said like, hey, oh my gosh, I follow you on Instagram. Let's grab a cup of coffee. And then we met in the work context, continued our like relationship within the work context, and then eventually gravitated to me asking her like, hi, would you like to be my mentor? But like she said yes, and then like now she's my mentor and just like a really good like ally of mine. So like that's a whole like network.
So, but that was interesting because it was half and half, where you knew them in a personal. Well, no, you didn't know them in a personal.
I didn't know that they were like working at my company.
So cool.
I just thought I'd have more leverage reaching out to them through work. Like people are more likely to respond in the work context than like in a like,
because they're paid like, to respond to emails basically. So that's so interesting. And mentorship again is such a good topic to go into. Yes. But I guess that's the only time where I've also cold messaged someone. Okay, this is definitely not the only time, but the first one that comes to my head of cold messaging someone was like finding who became my coach, because I'd seen her at a panel. She didn't know who I was just in the audience. And then I think I emailed her and messaged her and she responded. But again, that like took so much courage to work up, because that's out of the blue. You're just like, hi, I basically have a girl crush on you.
Basically.
Can we like, but I think the what is it? Like, the approach I took is the same, where I was like, I find what you're doing, insert some topic or a sentence interesting, would love to learn more. Like, would you be free for a coffee? I think that just generally, what is it? make them feel good by giving them a compliment, and then just make it all about them. And it is all about them, because you're reaching them because you've got something that you'd love to learn about. It's not dishonest. It's not.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this has been such an amazing conversation. I'm really glad that we got to do this. Thank you so much, Shona, for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I feel very honored.
Thank you everyone for listening today. You can find us at TATG Podcast on Instagram, on TikTok, and also on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe, share. You'd find us on Spotify, which is probably where you're listening to this, Apple Podcasts, and just anywhere that you generally get your podcasts from. If you have it, we're probably there. Thank you guys so much for listening, and see you next week. Bye.
Happy friend making.
Happy friend making. Bye.